Clark Lee's got himself a really, really tough job. The Vanderbilt Commodores have always been a team that sits near, if not right at the bottom in the ranks of the SEC. They just don't compare to a lot of the other teams that are within their own conference, and this year may be no different. However, there's a lot of returning talent, a lot of pieces coming in through the portal, and you get the feeling that if there's a year for Vanderbilt to make a jump, it's 2024. Will that be the case for the Vanderbilt Commodores this upcoming season? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you to prediction season, where it is the final day of Power 4 predictions. After today, all the Power 4 teams will have a video on my channel. We have Vanderbilt and Stanford up left. Guys, if you are a college football nerd like I am, you got to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. Go watch my other prediction videos. And hey, thank you for watching this video. Help support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. Interacting with the channel in literally any way helps to support it, whether that's, again, subscribing, ringing the bell, watching my videos, or simply liking, commenting, or sharing. You're helping to support what I do here on YouTube, and it really does mean a lot to me. Again, this is the final day of Power 4 predictions. Please go watch my other videos if you're a fan of a Power 4 team. And now let's dive on in. Final team out of the SEC, it's the Vanderbilt Commodores. How do we do predictions this year? Well, I'm glad you asked. We'll take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and at the end of the video, we will break down the Vanderbilt football schedule, and we'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. A couple more things before we do start, however, because as soon as my slide changes, there it goes. Right over here are going to be the stats the team put up either offensively or defensively last season. And, of course, for your viewing pleasure, dear viewer, right below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. We'll waste no more time. Let's talk about this Vanderbilt offense. In 2023, well, just kind of saw what you would expect, right? Vanderbilt was sat at the bottom of the SEC last season, and there wasn't a whole lot of things to work on. If you had a team in the SEC playing Vanderbilt, you could pretty much look at it and say, okay, we're going to be able to beat Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt was competitive in some games last year, and there were some really good facets to this offense last season, but you do lose a lot off of this offense from last year, most notably at the quarterback position, because it's going to be a completely overhauled room in 2024. A.J. Swann and Ken Seals, both of them had pretty solid playing time at the quarterback position for this team last year. Both of them have entered the transfer portal. Swann had 1,457 yards, 12 touchdowns, 7 picks, while Ken Seals had 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on 1,183 yards passing. Swann around 55% completion, while Seals was a tick higher at around 59%. You also do lose Walter Taylor, who only threw 15 passes last year, but that's every quarterback that threw a pass for Vanderbilt in 2023, gone now to a new program in 2024. A.J. Swann has gone over to LSU, Walter Taylor's gone over to Colorado, and Ken Seals has gone over to TCU. So, okay, you obviously have to either rely on some depth, which there wasn't a lot left in this quarterback room, or you relied on the transfer portal. That's exactly what the Vanderbilt Commodores did, and I'll be honest, they got some pretty solid ones here. Blaze Berlowitz is a guy coming over from New Mexico State, but you do get a more important name from New Mexico State, the player that I believe will be your starting quarterback here in 2024. That's Diego Pavia. You look at what he did last season with the New Mexico State Aggies, 2,973 yards, 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions on 60% completion percentage. And you go ahead and take a look at what he did on the ground last season as well. 928 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. He's a great dual threat quarterback, and he's probably going to end up being that starter here. You did get Nate Johnson coming in from a Power 4 program in Utah. Obviously, you saw his ups and downs with the Utes last season, as the Utes had to play without Cam Rising all of last year. But Diego Pavia, to me, unquestionably, with all due respect to Johnson and Berlowitz in this room, is the most talented player, and I think gives Vanderbilt the best chance to win here. I really like Diego Pavia as a quarterback. I think his dual threat ability is going to be tough for some of these SEC defenses to handle. Pavia, I think, will be that starting quarterback here. Now you got to take a look at what he has in his skill position room, right? You go and take a look at this running back room. Well, the second leading rusher off last year's team, Patrick Smith, is gone. 327 yards and 2 touchdowns on 79 carries for him. This is the rush game that really wasn't stellar in any facet last season, but you do return some pretty good talent. Cedric Alexander does come back, and So a couple guys come in from the portal. New Mexico State is the destination again. Jamani Jones and McKalen Young are both coming over from the New Mexico State Aggies to be running backs here. I think they're going to sit behind Cedric Alexander. He probably will end up being that feature back, but Jones and Young, I think, are going to get some really good carries for this team, and they will be impact players here. If you're wondering why all the New Mexico State players are transferring in, well, that would be because Jerry Kill is technically on this staff. No, he doesn't have a huge role like offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, anything like that. No, he is I believe, chief consultant to the head coach, and he's like a senior advisor type role. But that's why all these New Mexico State players are transferring over to Vanderbilt, and they're getting a lot of talent for it. Before I go any farther, I figured I would say that just in case you were just like, wow, that's a lot of New Mexico State players. Yeah, that's exactly why. Their old head coach and Jerry Kill, who suddenly stepped away from that team, is now with Vanderbilt and kind of in advising role. Well, the players love him so much they decided to follow him over to the SEC. Wide receiver room, though, is where you take some really, really big hits because your top 3 wide receivers from last year are all gone, and all of them are going to be pretty talented players elsewhere. Will Shepard led the team with 684 yards, 8 touchdowns on a team-high 47 catches. London Humphreys is off to Georgia. He had 439 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. And Jaden McGowan, while he didn't reach the end zone last season, still at 383 yards, 36 catches, was still a really big impact in that wide receiver room. I already told you where London Humphreys was going. Will Shepard is off to Colorado while Jaden McGowan is off to Boston College. So it left your wide receiver room looking like this. Junior Sherrill, who was the team's 4th leading receiver last year, not a bad piece of this wide receiver room at all. 293 yards and 3 touchdowns last season. A guy who also had around 200 yards last year. That was Quentin Skinner. Sorry, not Quentin Skinner. Quincy Skinner, my apologies. He is back as well. 204 yards for him, 3 touchdowns last season. Richie Hoskins is back, but again, losing 3 guys like that, you're going to want to supplement some through the transfer portal. That's exactly what Vanderbilt did. Loic Fwanji is coming over here from Texas Tech. He was pretty inconsistent over there, trying to find some consistency in Nashville. And Jeremiah Dillon is over here as well. He's an Ole Miss transfer that just got lost in a very talented room. Could see big playing time in 2024. And a couple freshmen. How about that? Joseph McVay and Tristan Brown enter this room as freshmen. They could see pretty good playing time there as well. Top 2 tight ends from last season. Gone. Justin Ball and Logan Kyle will be playing for new teams in 2024. But you go ahead and take a look at what the tight end room has now. Cole Spencer was lost to injury last season. He'll be back and could end up being that starting tight end here in 2024. Camryn Johnson is back as well. But the guy that I think will get the most reps out of the tight end position is another New Mexico State transfer, Eli Stowers, who was really good for the Aggies last season. On the offensive line, Bradley Ashmore, while I'm not knowledgeable if he's been invited to mini camps or anything like that, he did declare for the NFL draft, so he is gone. Julian Hernandez has utilized his eligibility to the fullest of his extent. He is gone. And Junior Uzebu is gone through the transfer portal. So what does that mean for your offensive line? Well, Gunnar Hansen, Grayson Morgan, Misael Sandoval, Kivo Wesley, Xavier Delphin Castillo, my apologies, are all coming back, while Stephen Lasoya, Stephen Hubbard, and Cade McDonald are all entering here through the transfer portal. So you go ahead and take a look at what this offense is looking like here. As I kind of rambled on for a little bit there, had to throw in that part about Jerry Kill. That's why all the offensive pieces are transferring over here. Look, Pavi is going to be a really good quarterback for him. I think the running back pieces are going to fit in well. Eli Stowers will be a good tight end, and for pieces that are not from New Mexico State, such as Fuwanji and Dillon, I think they're going to fit in well to this wide receiver room. And overall, I'd be hard-pressed if this offense didn't take a big step forward next season. And I think you're going to find that Vanderbilt is going to challenge a lot of defenses in the SEC this season, but it is the defense that causes for some concern with the Vanderbilt Commodores. They allowed 36 points per game, 450 yards per game last year. The pass defense was not great. The rush defense was not great. They were horrible on third down, and I'm being nice when I say all that. They just were not a great defense last year. We'll put it that way. And it does lose some pretty solid talent off of last year's team, including Nate Clifton, a very, very impactful defensive lineman for this team last season. My apologies. Clifton last year, once I find a stat line, led the team in sacks. 5.5 sacks, 30 tackles last year. You tack on an interception as well. Very, very impactful guy off the edge last season. so Nate Clifton will be gone. So your defensive line room looks like this. Anias DeCosmo does come back. He had 2.5 sacks to couple with 33 tackles last season. Miles Capers will also be coming back here to this team. 29 tackles in the sack for him. Devin Lee, I will probably butcher this name, so I apologize. Yolana Altara is coming back, and Christian James, as well as some guys over from the transfer portal. Corday Cinder and Zaylin Wood will provide some depth. In fact, Cinder probably will get starting role minutes on the defensive line in 2024. Linebacker room, Ethan Barr, who was your team's 4th leading tackler last year at 54 tackles, 1 sack, 1 pass defended. One of your better defensive players is off through the transfer portal. And Kane Patterson is going to be gone off of this team. 43 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 pass defended. Really good linebacker here. He's utilized his college eligibility and graduated. So the linebacker room, well, another Patterson and Langston Patterson. I believe they are related. Commodore fans, you can correct me on that if I am indeed wrong. He was your leading tackler last year. Langston had 74 tackles, 1 sack, and a pick last season. He'll be joined by Brian Longwell, Jeffrey Ogochukwu, Prince Colley, and Bryce Cowan, among some other names you could throw into this linebacker room that return here in 2024. Defensive back room, you don't really you don't really lose anyone out of the cornerback room. You do, however, lose a huge piece in the safety room. Rightfully so. He's off to go play on Sundays. That is Jalen Mahoney. 59 tackles, led the team with 6 passes defended last year, and while he didn't record a pick last season, very highly impactful player. Vanderbilt will be missing his presence on defense a lot. Again, that is Jalen Mahoney. A couple other safety pieces did transfer out. Savion Riley was a top 5 tackler that had 48 tackles. He is gone, and John Housey is gone off the team as well. More of a depth piece here, and that should actually be an E, not a Y. All right, there you go. Apologies for that. But John Housey will not be returning here. 15 tackles from last year. More of a depth piece in the safety room, but nonetheless still a loss entering 2024. So when you really talk about this defensive back room, hey, the cornerback room looks pretty good entering this season. Martel Height does come back, had 38 tackles, 1 pass defended. 1 pick last season. Tyson Russell, Trudell Berry, they all returned to this cornerback room. They all got pretty good playing time last season, as well as a couple transfers that enter this room. I mean, Marlon Jones Jr., Colby Taylor, those are guys that I think are going to get some solid playing time in the cornerback position. And in your safety room, well, you get back CJ Taylor. DeRicky Wright is coming back. Marlon Sewell is back. DeRicky Wright, the surprising return there, 46 tackles, tied for that team lead with 2 interceptions. He was actually tied with that of CJ Taylor, who was your leading tackler among safeties last year, not named Jalen Mahoney, your leading returning tackler. But DeRicky Wright was entering the portal, then decided to stay with the Vanderbilt Commodores, so that's a big get back for them. Randon Fontenette does come over from TCU, and you get, I believe, a 4-star freshman, according to 24/7 Sports, in here in Dante Carter, that's expected to get second string, maybe first string playing minutes this season. And kickers are people too, and Vanderbilt loses a couple of good ones. Matthew Hayball is going to be gone off to the NFL, while Jacob Borsilla, the main place kicker, is gone due to graduation. So you return Brock Taylor and Will Ferris to be the kickers for this season. Those guys will probably battle it out for time, but a surprise transfer from Ohio State and Jesse Mirko, one of the better punters in the Big Ten last season, comes over to Vanderbilt to replace an NFL player in Matthew Hayball. Mirko may be an NFL player himself. So overall, when you take a look at this defense, yeah, the talent is there, but you have to see the scheme improve. You have to see the stats improve. And Vanderbilt, I think they're going to have a pretty solid offense this season. I think their offense is going to keep them competitive in a lot of games. That defense, though, that's what's going to have to take a massive step in the right direction in order for Vanderbilt to win some SEC games this year, because when you take a look at this schedule, once my slide changes, it does this to me a lot. There you go. This SEC stretch is really tough. Now, there are some manageable and winnable games, which we'll talk about here in a second, but you have to know how we break the schedule down. Any game at home will be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics or that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Commodores are going to win pretty easily here, while any game in yellow is a close competitive game, yet still win for Vanderbilt, and any game in red is a loss. And I think they start out with one of those games in red, because they have to play the Virginia Tech Hokies. Now, The Hokies have some holes to fill, definitely, but I mean, you take a look at what they return offensively. They got a lot of really good talent. Kyron Drones is back at quarterback. I think he's going to be a stud in 2024. Bashal Tootin is back. A lot of really good wide receivers. Defensively, probably where you have some more questions, that at least on the offensive side, but overall for Virginia Tech, you got a really good defense this season. I expect Virginia Tech to compete for a spot in the ACC title. They're going to be a very good team this season, and while Vanderbilt's offense can keep this one competitive, especially since this one is not in Blacksburg, that's why it means a lot that this game is at home, as long as you can stay away from Blacksburg. I still see it being a loss. I think Virginia Tech and Kyron Drones will be able to outduel this Vanderbilt offense. And again, Vanderbilt's defense, while it tries to get some things settled in, just won't be able to slow Kyron Drones, Bashal Tootin, and the rest of this Virginia Tech offense down. That's a loss for the Vanderbilt Commodores, but they should be able to get some wins their next two games. They should be able to beat Alcorn State. That's an FCS level program. And again, I think Vanderbilt's got a lot of really nice offensive talent. I think it'll be able to settle in here and win that one. And Georgia State, while in a normal year, I would really, and I don't say normal year to mean like these are any special circumstances, but okay, so let me rephrase. Any other year, I would probably look around and say that, hey, Vanderbilt should watch out for Georgia State, which they still should this year, maybe not as much as in other years. I think the Panthers will be competitive. They usually always are out of the Sun Belt, but they're losing a lot of talent from last season. Their head coach is gone, and they're projected to be one of the worst teams in the Sun Belt Conference this season. So I think Vanderbilt's going to be able to go on the road and get that win there pretty handily. And then welcome to the SEC. You have to start with a road game against Missouri. Yep, that's a loss. Brady Cook is back. Luther Burden is back. They got a guy from Georgia State and Marcus Carroll, as well as Nate Noel over from App State to help fill the gap of Cody Schrader. So instead of getting one Cody Schrader back, you get two guys to help fill in that role. Missouri did lose Blake Baker off the defensive side, but that defense is still going to be pretty solid here in 2024. Does lose a lot of talent, does have some solid transfer portal pieces coming in. However, in Missouri, I just think offensively, look, Brady Cook, Luther Burden, Vanderbilt is not going to slow them down enough, especially this game is on the road. That's a loss for the Vanderbilt Commodores. And even after your first bye week, and even though it's at home, it's not going to matter. It's the Alabama Crimson Tide. And yes, I know Nick Saban is gone. A lot of talent left with him, including Caleb Downs, including some offensive linemen, including some other really good defensive players, including a lot of that wide receiver room as well. But Jalen Milroe is still there. Kalen DeBoer is in. He's been a winner everywhere he's gone. And I don't think Tuscaloosa is going to be any different. Alabama wins that game by a landslide against the Vanderbilt Commodores. You got to go on the road and play Kentucky, and they're going to be a pretty tough team to beat this year as well. I think Kentucky is going to be a pretty competitive team this season in the SEC. Brock Vandegrift is coming in, and yeah, Kentucky's got some spaces to fill, but overall, they're much more talented than Vanderbilt, especially Vanderbilt going on the road. I don't see them pulling off any sort of crazy kind of upset. That's a win for me for the Kentucky Wildcats. Vanderbilt should finally be able to pick up a win. They end that three-game slide against Ball State. Ball State can be a team that I think is going to be fairly competitive in the Mid-American Conference this season. I don't see them being at the top of the ladder in that conference. I don't see them being toward the bottom. I see them being right around it, near the middle. I think Ball State's got a lot of nice, solid talent on it. Not enough to compete with Vanderbilt, especially with that Commodore offense. So that's a win for me for the Vanderbilt Commodore. So they get 3 wins here. It's already a step up from last season where they went 2-10, but then the rest of the way, again, welcome to the SEC. It's a gauntlet. You'll play one of the better teams in the entire country this season in the Texas Longhorns. That's a loss in Week 9. Quinn Ewers is back. The wide receiver room is absolutely loaded, especially if Texas can fill in those holes on the defensive side, which, or not defensive side entirely, but on that defensive line. Trey Moore from UTSA will help with that 14 sacks from last season. Texas is going to be one of college football's elite teams in 2024. That's a loss for the Vanderbilt Commodores, my apologies. On the road against Auburn, that's a loss as well. Hugh Freeze is going to have this team moving in the right direction in 2024, but Auburn's got to find that passing game here, right? Peyton Thorne has got to flash back to the 2021, 2022 version of himself, and this Auburn passing game has to have a pulse this season for them to take a bigger step in the right direction than what I think they're going to be taking. I think they're going to take a step in the right direction. There have to be some things that improve for them to go further than my expectation of them this season, but overall, Auburn's a much more talented football team. Playing in Jordan Hare should be able to get the win against Vanderbilt. This is the game right here that I potentially could see Vanderbilt winning in the SEC, but even though I don't have South Carolina having that great of a record at the end of the season, this is still a very, very talented team. Yes, they lost a lot through the transfer portal. They lost some really good players to the NFL, including their quarterback, Spencer Rattler. There were a lot of things on that team that just didn't go well this past season for South Carolina. This year, they probably should take a step forward in the right direction, even though that's not quite what I'm predicting. Look, there's a lot of returning talent here on this team. South Carolina's got some really, really good pieces, and I just don't think Vanderbilt's going to be able to keep up for a full 60 minutes. They might be able to be competitive. This offense could give the South Carolina defense some struggles, but overall, I just see South Carolina being able to pull away in the end. They got more talent on offense. They got more talent on defense especially, and I think that's what helps the Gamecocks go on the road and pull out that win. And then quite simply, I just don't think Vanderbilt is winning their last two games. On the road against LSU, Garrett Nussmeier has waited his turn, and yes, he does lose a lot of very talented weapons, and the LSU defense was not very good last season. Well, Blake Baker is coming in. Took a little bit for that Missouri defense to get going last year, but he figured it out and turned Missouri into one of the better defenses in the nation last season. He made some huge upgrades to that defensive staff. LSU still got Harold Perkins, who's one of the most talented defensive players in the entire country, and overall, I really like the LSU Tigers this season. That's a road game after your second bye week and a loss for the Vanderbilt Commodores, and then you will lose to your in-state rival in the Tennessee Volunteers. It is Nico time in Knoxville, and I think he's going to push this Tennessee team to be really good. Has got a lot of great returning weapons in that wide receiver room. Yes, defense, especially the secondary, has to take a step up, but overall they are way too talented. They will beat the Vanderbilt Commodores, and which means Vanderbilt goes 3-9 and another winless season in the SEC. Look, if Vanderbilt is going to have a year where they surprise a little bit. You look at all the transfers coming in, you look at all the pieces coming back. As long as that defense gets better, this could be the year that Vanderbilt gets a couple, at least one SEC win. But the schedule is brutal, and I just see Vanderbilt having another really, really tough season. But I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. Stanford is coming up next, our last P4 team, and I'll see you then. Goodbye.